Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple. A thrilling London derby took centre stage as Chelsea and Lampard hosted Arsenal and Arteta at Stamford Bridge. The match ended 2-2 thanks to Jorginho and Azpilicueta for Chelsea and Martinelli and Bellerin for Arsenal. The XG had the game massively in Chelsea's favour, but a closer look at the tactics reveals some interesting trends. So, let's take a look. A quick reminder of the formations, as you can see through our video sponsor, OneFootball's app. Chelsea stuck to the trusted 4-3-3, whilst Arteta used his so far preferred 4-2-3-1. And for formations, news, stats and more, you can check out the OneFootball app through the link in the description below. We'll start with Chelsea's on-the-ball play, as they had more possession. Chelsea looked to play out from the back during the first half, and Arsenal pressed high in their 4-2-3-1 shape in response. When Arsenal looked to push high up on the Chelsea midfield, Chelsea created space in the middle interestingly. Their fullbacks, particularly Emerson, were given the freedom to push high up the pitch, which would in turn allow the wingers, primarily Willian, to tuck in centrally between the lines, which he looked to do all game. As the fullbacks were picking up the wingers, Arsenal's double pivot had to drop deeper to prevent an overload, and this gave Chelsea's midfield more space. Kovacic would often drop deep and to the left to tie up Arsenal's winger or get space if the winger was tucking in narrow. This would then either create space for himself or Jorginho to look to progress the ball, and the two dominated the midfield. Kante also often pushed higher into this space to ensure that Arsenal didn't commit men to the press, and if they did, they would leave space between the lines which they could exploit. In general, the Chelsea midfield could comfortably keep the ball, rotating it and looking to play into the free wide regions. But of course, the early red card was a game changer, so let's have a look at how it changed their tactics. Well, Arsenal shifted to a 4-4-1 or a 5-3-1 depending on the situation, and shifted their high press to a deep block with Ozil now in the double pivot. This meant that Chelsea could now progress the ball through the first phase of play relatively unchallenged, and Ozil didn't constantly press Jorginho, as most teams tend to do, in order not to free space behind him. Chelsea therefore looked to use the width of the pitch to try and create gaps between the under-pressure team. This could be achieved by Jorginho dropping into a back three to free the wingers to push right up, or often, Azpilicueta could hang back more in the three as Hudson-Odoi was comfortable hugging the touchline. Azpilicueta, Hudson-Odoi and Kante would often form a passing triangle on the right, and with Willian tucking in, it created a side overload, and Arsenal, with their lesser numbers, had to compensate even more. This often left the switch to Emerson wide open, and he attempted a game-high 13 crosses as a result. But realistically, once 1-0 up, Chelsea struggled to create clear-cut chances, as this XG time map shows. This is because Frank would push both his free eights extremely high between the lines, leaving Jorginho with limited passing options and no midfielders to combine with. Lampard did this as the free eights and the wingers all being central freed up the flanks, and you can see their preference for attacking wide in the stats. From here, they encouraged crossing, with Emerson and Hudson-Odoi both whipping in several crosses. Some were dangerous, however this style at times became predictable, allowing Arsenal to clear all but one of the crosses, with Azpilicueta getting on the end of one from a set piece. Let's now look at the Gunners' attack. Arsenal were initially looking to play out from the back, with their double pivot looking to get on the ball. Interestingly, the fullbacks, particularly Bellerin, weren't given the license to advance and usually sat quite deep, inviting the wingers to press them. However, Chelsea pressed high from the onset, only conceding 8 passes per defensive action compared to Arsenal's 20. When the ball went wide to the centre-backs, particularly Mustafi, Abraham wouldn't press the man, instead cutting off the passing lane infield and forcing them to play in a limited zone. Kante and Kovacic would sit on Arsenal's double pivot at the same time. This high pressing contributed to the penalty, as Mustafi makes an error under pressure. In addition, the high press often forced Arsenal long, as shown by Leno, Xhaka and Mustafi attempting over 30 long balls between them. But that aside, Arsenal often looked to take advantage of the right-hand side. Ozil and Pepe often linked up well, with one of the two dropping deep and often dragging Emerson in whilst the other pushed higher up. Pepe often got 1 versus 1 with Emerson this way and completed a few dribbles. As the game went on, Kovacic generally began tracking Ozil in this region to prevent the wide overload. Once Kovacic did this, it did stifle Arsenal's attacking play before it started, and the sending off changed everything else. They now had a 4-4-1 with Martinelli wide left and Ozil now in the double pivot. Ozil tended to push higher up, however, when Lacazette dropped deep to ease the central overload, as Ozil would be looking for space. But the reality is, with a man less and Chelsea pressing high, they were extremely limited in attack. They instead kept things tight with their defensive formation. With Chelsea depending on crosses from the fullbacks, it left space wide open in the transition, where Arsenal could create 1 versus 1s out wide. There are good situations from this, and obviously the best example being the slip-assisted goal. But overall, Arsenal didn't create much, scoring with their only 2 shots on target, a clinical finishing performance, but they should be proud of limiting Chelsea's chances created to just over 0.5 xg between the first and second goal. Lampard will view this as a chance missed and may want to look into other ways to create chances rather than solely through crossing. But what did you make of the match? Anything I forgot to mention? Drop it in the comments below. But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.